And welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Glad you're with us today. Now, this is a show where we interview popular people, talented people, informative people. I tell you, this guy is all three of those.
Well, he is. We're welcoming back Congressman Tom Cole to join us while he's home for a while, and want to find out what's going on in Washington.
Well, there's no shortage of topics to talk about with what's going on in Washington.
No, we'd like to have him for about 5 or 6 straight shows, but maybe we better not impose too much.
One show with Congressman Tom Cole coming up next today on The Verdict.
A greener planet, cleaner air, a healthy economy, national security, a smaller deficit and a stronger dollar, green jobs, better jobs, energy independence, warmth and light and transportation. The reasons Chesapeake champions natural gas include your children and grandchildren, your community and its economy, its schools, roads, and charities. More hope for the future. More confidence in the direction of our nation. The need for energy that's clean, affordable, abundant, and very American. These are the reasons Chesapeake champions natural gas every day.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're really pleased to welcome back for his 4th appearance on The Verdict, the Honorable Tom Cole. Tom is the Congressman for the 4th District in Oklahoma. He did his undergraduate work at Grinnell College, got a master's at Yale University, and got his PhD at the University of Oklahoma. He's been a congressman from the 4th District since 2002. He's a member of the Appropriations Committee, is deputy whip for the Republicans, and we're sure glad that you could take time to come back and visit with us.
It's good to be here.
Tom, we're taping this show in the first half of August, so sometimes things change, but the energy bill is kind of an evolving process. What's your thoughts on the energy bill? What do you want to happen? What do you think's going to happen?
Well, I want this energy bill defeated. It's a terrible bill. It basically will impose an energy tax on every American, and in that sense really violates the spirit of the president's commitment not to raise taxes on anybody that makes less than $250,000 a year, because you buy gasoline, you turn on a light switch, you're going to pay higher prices. It barely passed the House, which I think was a very good sign. I think the Democrats expected that it would pass rather easily. It didn't. It got 219 votes, 218 is a majority. We had 44 Democrats defect on that bill, including Dan Boren in Oklahoma. If you're from an energy state, it's hard to be for this bill. So we think in the Senate it's not going anywhere. And the fact that we got that done in July, The Senate chose not to take it up in August. Now, to be fair, they had the Sotomayor, hearings and other things, and said they're putting it off to September. And frankly, September is now going to clearly be dominated by health care, not by this. I think there's a good chance it'll never see the light of day, and I'm hopeful that that's the case. It's just simply a bad piece of legislation.
We've had Larry Nichols on a time or two, and most recently he was very critical of the bill. Can you tell me what's your perspective on what kind of impact, if that bill should pass, it would have on companies like Devon?
Oh, it's going to be devastating to any domestic energy company. It's going to literally drive production overseas and away from the United States at a time when we need to be working to be more energy independent. But it's equally devastating to the coal industry. It's equally devastating to heavy manufacturing. As I said in one of the speeches, probably a little bit of hyperbole, but I said I can say one good thing about the bill. It's the best economic development bill China and India ever had. It's certainly going to drive American manufacturing outside the country. And you have to remember, we live in a global economy now, and capital and jobs can move very quickly from one place to another. We don't need to be giving people disincentives for something that will drive people away, and a pretty marginal effect. I mean, most people estimate if this thing is passed and enacted, global temperatures at the end of the century will be 0.2 degrees less. So it's really a huge revenue source, and it's subject to great manipulation. You can participate in the purchase of these credits and the trading of the credits without having any stake in the energy industry. So you're going to get Wall Street traders and hedge funds and a lot of people involved in manipulating the price. That's going to work to the disadvantage of the American consumer. It's going to make some people fabulously wealthy and discourage production. None of these things seem to me to be worth doing this.
The bill has so many flaws. It's surprising to me that it's getting so much push in Washington. Is the White House aligned with the Speaker on this bill, or do you?
Very much so. In the course of the campaign, the president said, "Look, if the cap and trade system I favor is enacted, quote, electricity prices will necessarily skyrocket." Now, for the Speaker, this is almost a theological commitment, to just be honest with you. I mean, this is something she believes in passionately. This is an approach that she thinks can work. So I understand her commitment. And when you have a Speaker and a President aligned, that's really powerful. But again, once we get to the Senate, they have to get to not 50%, but to 60. The energy producing states, we're outnumbered 10-1 by Californians in the House, but we're the same size as California, United States Senate. So the ball game changes a lot.
But I see the White House talking positively about natural gas. And this bill doesn't seem to placate that thought.
It really does. This has been a Democratic political strategy for several years, and it's a good one, which is to try and separate natural gas from the rest of the fossil fuels. As a matter of fact, if you'll remember, Speaker Pelosi actually defined natural gas as not being a fossil fuel not too long ago, which was a shock to some of us. But we've got abundant supplies of natural gas. It is by far, quote, the cleanest of the energy formats. But if you're serious about greenhouse gases, I'd be much more impressed if the White House was foursquare behind nuclear. There's no greenhouse gas emissions there. We know it works. We get 20% of our electricity from nuclear power today. The French get about 80. There's an international market in it. We've operated this safely. So there's lots of alternatives to be dealing with global warming as opposed to cap and trade. And certainly anything that discourages domestic production, I think, is a big mistake.
Let me change the subject just a minute. I noticed on your website you had a notation that one of the issues you're interested in deals with the Second Amendment. And we know the Second Amendment talks about the right to bear arms and all. Can you tell our viewers what your concerns are, what you think the issues are today in relation to the Second Amendment?
Well, I think we've got an administration that's, making political calculations where the Second Amendment is concerned instead of having a fundamental belief in it. The Attorney General, Eric Holder, said on several occasions, I believe that we ought to have more gun control. I think that's a mistake. I think this is clearly an administration that's rather hostile to the Second Amendment, but frankly, it's also an extraordinarily adept political administration, and so far I think they've made a calculation in terms of actually moving legislation that says, look, that's way down our list. We've got cap and trade, we've got health care, we've got other issues ahead of this, but it's never helpful when you've got an administration in power that has an antithetical view to what you believe in. you know, the NRA's picked up over 1 million members since President Obama took office. That's a pretty good indication that gun owners have a great concern about where the administration ultimately will go. This state, again, I don't think you've got any concerns. I mean, all the delegation is awfully strong defenders of the Second Amendment.
Is there any pending legislation that would alter the existing situation?
There's always legislation that's submitted. I don't think it's going anywhere. I mean, it's not there's legislation by individual members, but again, the calendar is so full, even things that we ought to be dealing with are being pushed aside by cap and trade, and I think by health care is clearly going to dominate all fall. So there are things that, you know, normal reauthorizations. The Senate is way behind on appropriations. The House has actually moved pretty expeditiously through the appropriations process. But you know, we're going to have a legislative logjam in September, October, November.
Well, let me stay on that topic. Based on your experience of being there for many years in one position or another, is the legislative process moving more slowly this year than in your past experience?
No, it's actually moved rather rapidly. You know, but you have to look at the choke points that are coming. But Congress did the easy part of the session first. That is, you know, we passed the stimulus. I voted no. I want to say I voted no on just about all these things. We passed the stimulus, $787 billion. We passed a new budget for 2009 called the Omnibus, about $30 or $40 billion higher than President Bush would have signed had he been president. We passed the 2010 budget. All that was done by April. Along with more, and we've moved all the appropriations bills through the House by the August recess. So on the spending money part of it, the congressional credit card, we're moving at lightning speed, enough so that it ought to concern people. Now, where we finally began to see this thing juggernaut slow down was cap and trade, which it took longer, went harder. I think funding the war in Afghanistan took longer and harder than the administration wanted, partly because instead of presenting us with a clean bill, which they did at first, and it passed overwhelmingly, they then added on international monetary funding and weakened a couple of things the Senate had done in terms of Gitmo and in terms of the release of controversial photographs. That slowed everything down because the Republican resistance, particularly in the House, was essentially unanimous, and they had to go get literally change Democrats on the Afghan war because they didn't have a majority. And then finally, this health care debate. Remember, their goal was to have a bill out of both the House and the Senate by the August break. They didn't succeed in that. We've got a bill ready, more or less, in the House. And of course, the Senate Finance Committee, I mean, goodness knows what's going on there amongst those six people, but they clearly haven't been able to come to, you know, some sort of bipartisan compromise.
Let me get us to a break. We're visiting with Congressman Tom Cole. You're watching The Verdict.
To be Chickasaw, you have strength, you have faith, and your family comes first.
I was diagnosed with FSGS, which is a progressive kidney disease that leads to kidney failure.
I believe that being Chickasaw makes me strong. It made me a strong mother for Melissa.
She told me that day, don't worry, I'll be there for you. I've got 2 kidneys, you can have 1.
They took me in first, and we just hugged each other, and I said, Melissa, it's almost time, it's gonna be all right.
My mom has given me life twice, and how do you ever thank someone for giving you a second chance? Through those challenging times, my family and I knew that we were gonna get through it, that we are a Chickasaw family, and that whatever obstacle may arise, together we will conquer it.
Home values are down in some states, but not in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's home values have increased 4.2% during the past 12 months. Unlike some states where home values have decreased as much as 20%. Good thing you're in Oklahoma. There may be real estate problems in some states, but there has never been a better time than now to buy or sell a home in Oklahoma. One of the most affordable states in the country, Oklahomans are buying and selling homes every day, and an Oklahoma Realtor can show you how. Good thing you're in Oklahoma.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and today's guest, Tom Cole. Congressman, tell us about the health care debate that continues in Washington. Where is this headed?
Well, I think the debate's now in all America, judging from what I'm seeing, and I think it'll continue. This is an enormously complex piece of legislation. We really don't have a bill, if you will. I think that's been, by the way, one of the failures of the president so far. He didn't present us with a cap and trade bill. He didn't present us with a stimulus bill. He didn't present us with a health care bill. He basically let Congress write whatever it wanted and sort of laid down guidelines. And that's meant legislation's been very far to the left. And that's particularly what we've seen happen in the House. Now, the House has now passed a bill through all three relevant committees. It's not really three bills, but it's three sections of the same bill. Ed and Labor did the public option. That'll be the competing insurance group to the private sector. Ways and Means did how we're going to pay for it, which is basically we're going to cut Medicare by over $500 billion, and we're going to add a surtax on to high income earners and small businesses, what it's effectively going to be. And then third was the health portion itself, which was quite a struggle in energy and commerce, and that's now gotten through. It's a $1.6 trillion bill. It's 1,200 pages in the House. In the Senate, where they've finished the health portion of it, but not the finance portion of it, it's about twice as long as I understand it. I've not seen the Senate bill. So right now, the game plan, if you're for it, would be to try and pass both bills in September, get them into conference, have them iron out the difference. And it's clear the bills are going to be very different through the two bodies, and then vote on a final product sometime in the fall. And I think that's what the president wants to do.
But in an environment where jobs are so important, doesn't the health care bill cost us jobs?
Oh, I think without question.
And we know the energy bill is going to cost us jobs. I don't understand the connection here for the Democratic Party in trying to push these two bills in these economic times.
I think for both these things, probably health care even more so, are sort of the holy grail of Democratic politics. I mean, this is, the big thing they tried to do in 93, 94, failed. Truman actually laid it out a long time ago. So it's been an ongoing theme for Democrats. My good friend, he strangely enough is my friend Rahm Emanuel, I will promise you, is telling the Democrats right now, said, look, we tried this in 93, 94, we fell apart, we didn't get it done, we got massacred at the polls the next election. We've got to get through this space and actually have an accomplishment to run on. We can't run on having failed to do this. So they're going to put everything that they have behind it. The problem is the plan they've laid out is really bad. The public option is an enormous mistake, because what you're going to have is you're going to have a very unfair competition, and you're going to have businesses begin saying, look, I don't really need to provide health care. I'll just pay the 8% penalty of my payroll, which for a lot of businesses is cheaper than what they pay now, and just slide that off. So I think the president is somewhat is certainly mistaken when he says, look, if you like what you got, you can keep it. Most people don't get to decide what they have. Most people are in negotiation with their employer, but if their employer decides something else, that's what the plan's going to be. And I think that's got people concerned. Seniors certainly don't like the idea of cutting $500 billion out of Medicare. They think that's going to affect their quality. And we're going to set up a situation. Right now, we finance Medicare not only through Medicare taxes, because we under-reimburse healthcare providers. We give them about 5% of what it really costs to provide the care. Where does that money get made up? Guess what? On the back of private insurers. So if you're under 65, you're probably paying more than your coverage really costs, because you're subsidizing, if you will, health care in the Medicare system. So if you shrink the private sector, you drive up the price more, and eventually you just tip it all to where you have a government-run healthcare system. There's a group called the Lewin Group, which is, I want to be very open about this, they're respected by both sides. They've been used by both Democratic and Republican administrations to do projections, but they're owned by healthcare companies. So, but they are very good and very professional. They estimate within 5 or 6 years you would have like 60 to 70% of the people that are in private insurance now in the government plan. I mean, it's just a tipping factor. And I'm amazed that we do this because we've got another model out there in Medicare Part D, which has worked very well in terms of prescription drug coverage for seniors that is all private plans competing with one another. And it's the only health care program we've had in government where the cost has come in less than was estimated because of the competition, and it's less to the consumer than we estimated it would be when it was passed in 2003.
So what do you predict?
Well, I think in the end they get something because I think they have to get something. But the real question is, what will it be and what will they put on the table to get there? You know, there's a lot of things we're not talking about because there's sort of political taboos from the Democratic side that we ought to be. Medical liability insurance reform is one of them. You know, tort reform ought to be part of this. Second, we ought to have a national market in health insurance. You can buy your car insurance from Pennsylvania if you want. You can't do that with your health insurance. And that creates lots of inefficiencies. Third, nobody in America should pay for health care with, you know, post-tax dollars, with after-tax dollars. Right now, if you get your health care insurance from a major employer, it's all done with pre-tax dollars. But if you're an individual out in the market, you've already had your income taxes, your Social Security taxes, your Medicare taken out of that dollar, and then you got to go buy. So there's lots of things that we could do, many of which don't cost very much money, that we ought to do first before we stumble into a government-run plan that's going to have all the problems and all the bureaucracies and all the inefficiencies that government always brings to things.
Cash for clunkers, your views on
Terrible
that
bill. You know, it's a great bill if you, I guess if you went out and bought it and you're a dealer, but we can't subsidize every purchase in America to the tune of $4,500. And what we did was sort of speed up the car market. We probably distorted the used car market. We certainly hurt people in the salvage and the parts business because we're throwing away assets that still have values to them. So I voted against it twice. Not very many of us did, only 103, and I'm pleased I did. I think it's a bad bill. Together, between the first bill and the second one, we're going to spend $3 billion on this. Now, if we really wanted to do that, why didn't we just take that's $3 billion more on top of the stimulus, by the way. That's not, you know, we've got a lot of unspent stimulus money. Most of it is unspent. We've only spent about 15% of it so far. So, you know, the economic turnaround we're seeing, or stabilization, if you will, really doesn't have much to do with the stimulus. So why didn't we just take, if we were going to do it, which I think is a bad idea, but if we were, why did we throw another $3 billion on top of a staggering debt and spending rates? Why didn't we just, you know, clip $3 billion out of money that was already appropriated?
What's your take, changing the subject, what's your take on the economy in general? Are we seeing any kind of recovery in your view, or is it?
We've got about 90 seconds left.
Yeah, it's better, but it's mostly healing on its own. You know, I think the financial system we've gotten through in pretty good shape. So, you know, credit's moving again, loosening up. You can count on things to work out over time, and I think they will, and I think that's happening a little bit. There's going to be a lot of people, if it does work out, you know, trying to take credit for the stimulus. I don't think that's true. I think the stimulus in out years is going to hurt us by driving inflation forward, raising interest rates, and it's a dangerous bill. But in time, the American economy will recover.
Midterm elections are coming up.
It's going to be a great year to be a Republican. You know, even Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton were both very successful presidents. They had bad first midterms. I think this president will too. And I think particularly health care, cap and trade, those kinds of things are enormously controversial. So I'd look for a pretty sizable Republican
How
gain.
many seats are considered up in the air by both parties?
Well, the range today would probably be, you know, 40 to 50 seats in play. If you're a Republican, you'd think you'd get between a dozen and 2 dozen right now. So probably not enough to take the majority, although things can spiral out of control for a majority party as they did in 93, 94. More likely, I think you'll see, again, Republican gains around 20. High teens to low 20s would be my bet today, but, you know, long way to go yet.
All right. Congressman, thank you so much for coming back on The Verdict.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Congressman Tom Cole, today's guest on The Verdict. Kent and I'll be back with a final word right after this.
Your power. All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of the verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Tom Cole is one of the leaders of the Republican base in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I think on today's show you saw why.
Well, indeed. I mean, he's one of the brightest guys in Congress, no doubt about it. His whole career has exemplified that. The 4th District is really lucky to have Tom represent them, and I'm confident that they'll continue to look that way as the time progresses, but we're really pleased he'd come and talk to us about what's going on.
Website information, cole.house.gov. More information on Tom Cole and the U.S. House of Representatives. And of course, you can go to our website and tell us about a guest you'd like to see on an upcoming edition of The Verdict. For Kent, I'm Mick. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.